Eric, thank you so much for joining me today. Excited to have you on, the founder of Injective, and deep diving not only your ecosystem, but the technical stack and really what the community has been up to. So thank you so much for coming on.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. Really appreciate it.
Of course. Well, maybe to start off the podcast, uh, I think today there are now lots of different engineering solutions to kind of scaling blockchains. You have Ethereum's of the world, which was the first iteration of smart contracts. Then that roadmap kind of expanded to layer twos. Now you have some layer threes, kind of the full gamut with app chains, integrated chains, the modular thesis. I would love for you to maybe start out high level on what was the background context with Injective and why did you set out to start something different in this space?
Yeah, so for sure the landscape back in, I would say 2018, 2019, when we first started ideating on, the base layer infrastructure for Injective, it was very, very different. But at the same time, not too different from like what people were envisioning and like expecting. Basically, at that time, what we had in the space were mainly just base layer infrastructure, people trying to reinvent the wheels, trying to optimize different types of, consensus designs and also different types of like VM designs to try to like parallelize various aspects of things, or, just generally, doing some like micro optimization. And that kind of spawned for, I would say various takes on like EVMs, EVM also powered by different types of underlying consensus mechanisms, and completely different consensus mechanisms coupled with like a different types of VM environments such as like Solana, etc. But at the same time, we were also seeing a lot of the early design and iterations around layer two solutions, modular architecture, etc. So we kind of got like a sense of basically being speculative about the innovation trends and some of the ground truths that seem to overlap time and time again. And so for starters, like for Injective's case, it was meant to be kind of like this sector utility focused infrastructure that tries to steer a certain like kind of protocol level bias on like a certain set of use cases and a certain set of like stripping all the way to the bottom like operations. So for Injective's case, we realized that in order to build like a future proof and also like forever competitive type of protocol and network, the best way to do this is to kind of forgo like the generalized or the monolithic aspect of things and focus on creating kind of like an optimized stack, or like from like a future developer's perspective, like a set of interface that allows for future optimization, that you can plug and play, incorporate different types of innovative consensus mechanisms and different types of scalability solutions, and that became a very, very natural marriage with the current infrastructure that Injective has built on top of, which utilizes like Tendermint / Comet BFT and also like various Cosmos SDK modules. And it's because at the end of the day, like there is a foremost expectation of all these messages and their behaviors and the storage commitment that comes with it. But at the same time, the actual mechanism underlying and actually like the software basically, or the P2P process that kind of calculates that is pretty open, and it really allows for anything to happen.
Yeah, it's been fascinating just how much progress has been made since those early days in 2018, 2019. I remember joining a little bit late towards that tail end of 2017 and feeling like I missed the trend. I feel like as you come into crypto, your first cycle, you always feel like you're a little bit late, but in the grand scheme of things in global adoption, we're still very much at the starting line, even today. You mentioned ultimately tailoring Injective a little bit more to specific use cases. Can you talk a little bit more in depth about what use cases you're particularly excited about with Injective?
Yeah, certainly. Like previously, I was like going a little bit too like low level on like the design choices and the philosophies. So just like going back up on like a high level perspective, what that kind of like ended up happening is Injective kind of has like a set of like out of box plug and play module that powers a lot of common or overlapping types of DeFi or general financial primitives or any type of like financial related computations. So out of box, there's an exchange module that powers the spot and derivatives order book exchange process that allows for the query, aka access of these type of shared, synergized on-chain order books, and also the ability to like place order, matching against it, and creating trades against it. And then on top of that, there's also a lot of other like complementary modules such as Oracle module, different types of on-chain kind of like nice little features such as with the CosmWasm environment, which is a smart contract environment that's like kind of optimized for Injective's infrastructure. It also has a auto executing feature that removes the need for a crank, and that allows for kind of like a guaranteed execution at like a slight cost premium compared to obviously like doing like an async transaction on chain. And that's also a very, very useful feature for any type of like kind of like execution guarantee for different types of actors, because that's always processed at the beginning of every single block for a cost premium. And that removes a lot of the MVV related issues on top of the exchange mechanisms. And on top of that, bunch of like new stuff getting incrementally added, like the recent very exciting like RWA module, etc. So with that kind of like entire module stack that kind of interoperate with each other, and also being plug and play with the greater DApp ecosystem, it kind of creates this very, very unique advantage where a set of contract or a set of protocols built within EVM simply can't create this naturally plug and play and compatible layer because of the innate restrictions within EVM that tries to set like a generally acceptable rule for everyone to play by.
Using CosmWasm, did you have to ultimately rewrite the virtual machine, or what did you guys do on the virtual machine side?
Yeah, so basically we managed to without kind of reinventing the wheel, which adds a lot of like unnecessary attack surface area. We managed to kind of like add a lot of like complementary features such as auto execution layer to basically allow for a compatibility with like all the other projects that also adopted CosmWasm smart contracts to immediately deploy, etc. But at the same time, the entire CosmWasm layer is also containerized almost as like one of the modules amongst many others. And what this allows for us to do is to have parallelized VM environments in conjunction with CosmWasm down the road to have EVM, etc. And currently we're kind of doing this via different rollup solutions, which allows for kind of like optimization, or saving a lot of space and allowing for room for experimentation without congesting the core chain, etc. Due to rapid iteration. And this basically spawns INEVM, SVM, etc.
Nice. Very cool. Well, to me, it seems like these modules are really kind of the secret sauce behind Injective that allow some of these unique innovations to happen on chains, whether it's spinning up unique applications or being able to iterate faster.
Yeah, for sure. I would treat modules as more of a framework, and these are kind of like precompiles within EVM, etc. And modules, very much kind of containerizes them, kind of like organizes them in like a more like functional way. So instead of like just like it's that kind of like address identifier by co identifier, it's like like this is the exchange module, that's the Oracle module, etc. Really at the core of it, it's really just a bunch of like precompile that has more optimized processing and computation, or more efficient access to storage compared to just stripping like everything away compared to like a EVM layer.
Gotcha. Very cool. And so maybe like jumping back a little bit, you ultimately set out to build Injective after 2017. What was that unique point of view that you wanted to really bring on in the world that allowed Injective really to come to light?
Yeah, so I think one of the common consensus at that time, and I think that has been challenged quite significantly, but at the same time kind of played a part in terms of defining like Injective's ecosystem's identity, is that the multi-chain world, at least at that time, based on like what was around, doesn't make a lot of sense. If you're just trying to create like a EVM but slightly faster EVM, but like different types of trade-off on the cap spectrum, EVM but this and that, and that created kind of like this viewpoint where it certainly oftentimes makes sense to build like a base layer infrastructure, build like a decentralized blockchain, but it has to have a very much defensible and irrefutable purpose and utility. And this is kind of what allows for Injective to really steer into the sector focused angle in terms of like infrastructure design, et cetera. Because all the components that are built within Injective, it kind of breathe life into a lot of different types of very innovative mechanisms, trying to create these type of kind of scalable functionalities, or dealing with different types of like surge and like usage and adoption, and trying to come up with very very novel mechanisms to parallelize different things and do things that other people didn't. But basically the reason why I feel like we managed to accomplish a lot of those is that we were working within like a controlled or a constrained surface area, where it's more about like a formal function that's very very well defined, that's within like a pretty deterministic type of behavior expectation, instead of being extremely generalized, where this iteration cycle understandably is just a lot slower.
Yeah. I very much appreciate specialization to kind of find the unique wedge, because I think it's much harder today to be more general purpose with all the different general purpose chains that are out there today. As the space gets more competitive, I'm very curious just where the end landscape ultimately is going to be, whether it is going to be more of a modular world or app chains, or is it going to be a few kind of high throughput integrated chains. And your kind of like vision of the world, where do you see like things playing out from like a 5-10 year time frame from like the infrastructure stack?
Yeah. So I think actually interestingly, a lot of the cynicism is coming from 2018, where like a lot of people started steering into like ETH maximalism, like BTC maximalism,
I was
etc.
part of the ETH maxi camp for a little bit.
I mean, honestly, yeah, like start off like very much the same, right? It's mainly because like at that time, the innovations that were happening, the different types of competitive solutions that were under development, it seems like functionally kind of like very difficult to differentiate against a base layer, other than kind of like a marginal scalability properties, et cetera, that has very, very clear trade-off, where it's presented almost as like a choice rather than like a definitively better solution. And now I think like people really like kind of like understood that a lot of these cases it's oftentimes a choice, and it's about under that kind of like scenario where they decide to veer into high computation, like a low data store, etc., or different angle, which is modular architecture, trustless execution, etc. And by kind of like kind of narrowing down innovation with kind of like this context of like basically you can't really escape from like the fundamental like limitations of cap theorem, etc. Other than being able to like marginally improve over time. Really, you have to like come up with the most optimal solution under like a certain set of trade-offs. And that's what really breathed life to a lot of very, very strong and, like long-term defensible type of like these type of base layer, layer ones, layer twos, and, who knows, like maybe like layer three down the road, and creating this really like what now seems like a multi-chain world that makes sense. And that is honestly like really like kind of amazing to see, like all the builders like naturally like kind of converge into like a cooperative ecosystem, what's becoming very, very clear now is that basically, there's a very good reason why chains like Solana has, kind of like a product market fit in certain verticals, and strong defensibility in certain verticals. Obviously, like certainly very much of a chain that's under rapid iteration and development. And obviously, like it also makes sense why there's modular architectures, modular stacks, and various different takes on like a layer 2 solutions via different types of stacks. And you really start seeing like different types of applications start to thrive and really like gain adoption thanks to its base layer, and oftentimes only enabled by the capabilities of its base layer. Like a lot of different types of kind of like account abstraction mechanisms kind of enabled by kind of like the base layer, such as base, and allowing for like different types of application to really breathe life and really jump out of like what is typically considered as like a constraint of EVM or Ethereum blockchain limitations.
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, I think what I'm excited now is it seems like a lot of the infrastructure is maturing. We have, in my opinion, the ability to scale with sufficient infrastructure that should allow applications to build meaningful products, where from the engineering point of view, you don't have to focus as much on the underlying infrastructure, and you can focus more on applications. And I think from like the layer 1, layer 2, or layer 3, layer 4, right now it's about understanding, I think, from the engineering perspective, why would I build one place versus the other? And I think some of those boil down to some of the technical trade-offs that each of them make. But I think ultimately it's what those technical architecture designs allow you to build that I think is kind of the unique magic sauce. In Injective, what do you feel like is your like bread and butter, and or maybe your like elevator pitch to get engineers to come build an Injective versus everywhere else that they could possibly build?
Yeah, so I'd say like there are oftentimes a lot of applications that we've experimented, that we've seen the various builders trying to like bootstrap and build out, and the whole pitch for the longest time was, and actually is, that you can build a lot of different types of financial applications that are not possible elsewhere, and this is only possible enabled by like the modules, the infrastructure on Injective. Basically, before it was oftentimes like pretty tough to like point out. It's like, oh, like you can do this, but that's fully on chain, that's like super super cheap, etc. Or like like this plus this is only possible on Injective. But with the kind of like adoption and traction around Helix, around Mito, around Black Panther, around Dojo, etc., it's becoming very, very clear that like users simply won't be able to tap into or access different types of very, very interesting mechanisms, or like on-chain strategies, or placing like highly advanced order types, or engaging it with like super, super novel kind of like on-chain primitives like pre-launch futures without the Injective infrastructure. So the pitch has become fairly easy over time, which is like, it is the only place to enable different types of developers to build, events, financial protocols, primitives, and apps.
And are these modules, maybe from like a slightly more technical perspective, what are they being built in-house by the Injective kind of engineering team? Can anybody build the modules? What's kind of the rundown there?
Yeah, it's been very much of an open contribution, because every single module is like a containerized almost, in a sense, right? And basically, like a lot of developers end up incorporating a lot of very interesting mechanisms onto the Injective core chain. I think Skip has been working on various very cool on-chain modules for different types of Oracle usage, package forwarding middleware usage, etc., to enhance interoperability. So we started to see more and more different types of teams and projects and developers start to incorporate and kind of enhance the capabilities of Injective blockchain, and really and excitingly, like a very much exponential way.
Yeah, it's fascinating. I think the rise of kind of these parallel processing chains has really only begun, and in the past, I would say it was kind of a nice to have, where you didn't have much scale, but as scale gets larger and larger, being able to do parallel processing, process multiple transactions simultaneously instead of everything sequentially, it's dramatically better. It's not a small thing, and I think it helps with fees, with isolation. Engineers can build more unique applications, and I think being at the forefront of that has to be interesting internally.
Yeah, certainly. So basically, like Injective is one of the earliest quote unquote like boring adopters of like parallelization. And for the longest time, we thought that like it was kind of like expected, where like and it's part of a natural optimization process when you try to like parallelize basically like functionally parallelizable like transactions. Obviously, EVM has various restrictions that prevents or that enforces sequentiality, so it prevents really like parallelization. And a lot of very innovative work done by the Monad team, etc., is to create kind of like this optimistic process to parallelize them, right? But for Injective's case, it's like because of these functional and like almost like in Ethereum terms like precompiles that are very much formalized in a way where you know exactly what's parallelizable, exactly where like sequentiality is important, and that allows for like very much naturally like as part of work to parallelize them. And like also like more importantly, like Bitcoin Core has been parallelizable since like pretty much day one, and sequentiality is actually decoupled from the overall processing to enable that, right? And I think like over time we started really veering into it, and noticing like the end-to-end stack on the Tendermint layer, on the Cosmos layer, and on like a other like ecosystem. They all start to create different tools and different kind of like protocols to allow for more dynamic parallelization. So what enables Injective now to really heavily like explore and venture into parallelizing different types of VM environments, allowing let's say like EVM on Injective alongside CosmWasm, or allowing for like hyper optimization of exchange matching to scale up to hundreds of thousands of orders, hypothetically speaking, like per second. That's all enabled because of various vote extensions, ABCI++, being developed on the base layer, and that allows Injective to easily, without creating future compatibility issues, to basically be highly interoperable, be very hands off, while kind of reaching like an optimal point in terms of like parallelization and optimization.
Yeah, I think people still underappreciate it today, even though it's kind of now one of the newer hot trends that kind of emerge within 2024 is being able to parallelize execution. And I think engineers have taken a while, probably in my mind, to figure out when you go from like sequential processing to parallelization, what unique kind of capabilities you can kind of unlock. You mentioned the order books. Can you go a little bit deeper into what Injective enables for applications like order books?
Yeah, so order book is kind of like a chain level primitive in a sense, containerized by obviously like the concept of a module, and that allows for very simple like functional definition of like what an order book is meant to do, and thereby you can easily extract and identify like a parallelizable parts and different parts to like optimize without having to worry about like non-determinism or like different types of like forking issues triggered by like unexpected cases of like sequential assumptions. And for Injective's order book, it's quite simply put, it's actually utilizing like an exchange mechanism called like frequent batch auction, which out of box removes any type of MEV related issue, front running, sandwich attack related issues. But more importantly, it's a matching mechanism that's very much innately compatible with how a blockchain works. Basically, the whole like consensus process of finalizing like a block and then creating like a lot of deterministic like computations at the end, and more importantly, undergoing kind of like a one shot type of kind of like a exchange matching like computation is a lot more sensible and gas efficient from a user end perspective than like a traditional like order book exchange mechanism, which is called a continuous double auction, which means that as you input like an order, it undergoes a matching process. And that's where kind of like the sequentiality really comes in, is that whoever comes in order first, they're the winner, right? And then frequent batch auction obviously removes the concept of time, and instead it has like an auction interval where everyone is free to like post in orders, and the posting process is extremely light as a result. And they just do matching in one shot in like a pro rata fair way at the very, very end. So what this introduces is a highly like a huge opportunity, and leaves up for a lot of future room for like parallelization, for like optimization, because basically it's almost like you can theoretically undergo the entire like matching process in like a one shot type of computation. Obviously, in practice, it's not, but it gives you a lot more like upper bound in terms of like trying to optimize them, and allows you to kind of parallelize them, even simply just by like parallelizing them across markets.
Yeah, the sandwiching attack and mitigating that has become a more prominent issue in Solana, and I believe it will most likely become a larger issue on other chains if there's not things like payment for order flow. I think, as far as my knowledge, there's one other chain, say, that is ultimately doing the order matching on chain. Can you describe any of the differences between you and say on the order matching from the technical side?
I'm not too familiar with SAFE's specific exchange matching mechanism, because it's been a while for me, at least, because we've been working on it. We've been like improving it and like iterating upon it for like a few years when say launched into mainnet. And basically like there were a lot of very, very interesting like functionalities and features powered by say. And I think like also a lot of stuff that was missing within the say stack. So it was very hard from like a research and like development perspective to like compare like apples and oranges, just because of like the intended feature set, etc. And so like that this remind me to like kind of check in on like their code base and like check out like some of the new kind of like development around their core order book infrastructure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's, I think it's hard enough to kind of keep up with your own stack and everything going on in the ecosystem, let alone other ecosystems. Maybe if we back up though a little bit, I think, to me, what is very impressive, Eric, about you is the fact that you took on something extremely ambitious. I think doing a layer one is probably one of the hardest technical feats within all of blockchain and all of crypto. How did you get to this point where you felt comfortable from a technical aspect to be able to start this journey and say, hey, I think I can do it better than others. Let me go out and do it myself.
Yeah. So I think like first of all, like it's certainly like a calculated approach. because we know the scale of chain development. We know how complex it gets, given that a lot of my background is around consensus protocol research, etc. And even during my time dealing with cryptography stuff, one of the big no-nos, one of the things you definitely are not supposed to do is rolling your own crypto. And that is kind of similar to chain development, where it's one of the big no-nos is if you're trying to build something that's a more a higher level non-monolithic, or basically a more non generalized. One big no-no is messing with the consensus mechanism. So I think by picking your own battle, whether you work on the consensus mechanism and nothing else, or you work on the layer above it, and kind of take out of the box for various consensus solutions out there. It basically gives you a very, very strong first step to start your iteration cycle, and it allows you to build without having significant blockers and other layers, or exponentially increasing your scope and workload. And basically, we've always are very, very soberly aware of our own capabilities and our own man hour resources, etc. And kind of the productivity of every single a team member. And we do always are going to have a very, very ambitious goal and vision of building different elements. But it's also very equally important for us to look back. It's okay, we have three guys in a garage trying to build something. Here's what we can build. Honestly, we have to accept that we're not genius or gods. We can't just build what other teams of 20 people tried spending 2 years to build. And so it's time for us to pick our battles and do what we're best at, and build it out in terms of stages, and tackle different types of problems, or build different types of custom native layers later on.
Yeah, knowing your expertise and doubling down on that, I always find extremely important, and not very many, I would say, are able to kind of figure out their specific niche and double down, let alone going through kind of that bear market. You guys actually launched last kind of crypto bull market. Can you talk about kind of, as an engineer, as a builder, building a community, kind of the ups and downs that really came along the way with building Injective and going through that bear market to where we are today in the last 6 months?
Yeah, so I generally in a very, very weird way enjoy bear market a lot more than a bull market, because bull markets typically when you have a weird type of competitive environment, where let's say in a agent-based life cycle, right? Over time, it's a known set of people. Let's say 100 different types of agents iterating, etc. They have a budget in terms of resource, and they would have to spread it out for longevity's sake, etc. But bull market is when that entire picture gets disrupted, where you added 10x more agents into the mix, and they're resource budgeting is 10x also shorter than everyone else. So this kind of creates a very, very strange type of a resource allocation challenge, or a roadmap challenge, where no matter how fast you build, or no matter how many things you build, you will always lag behind different types of narratives that spawns out. You will always lag behind different types of kind of innovations coming out from different types of verticals, or most importantly, different types of kind of a user trend that gets recycled every month. So from guys who are it's their first time around, building in this space during a bull market, it ends up kind of being super counterproductive, and being fairly distracting. And it's a very, very important lesson, I think, for a lot of like the builders in the space to learn, is that like narratives really much come and go during a bull market, and over time you either build like a platform or like an infrastructure that can allow for low cost enablement or like integration of these type of narratives, because oftentimes they just rhyme in the end, or like you got to pick and choose, and be able to like preemptively build around a certain narrative that you firmly believe in, instead of like hearing people telling you is like, oh yeah, like no, the hottest thing is this right now, you should build that, because by the time someone tells you that, it's already pretty late.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the narratives are generally a lagging indicator. I've found them maybe like sometimes directionally correct, where people get excited about a certain area where dollars should flow into that certain ecosystem, but then people get way too excited, and then there's probably 5 or 10 projects that should have gotten funded, but then it's 100 or 1,000, and then everybody starts competing, and VCs kind of FOMO, engineers try to go to the hot new thing. And to your point, the bear markets are a lot more peaceful, to be able to really focus and double down on the things that you have a unique edge in. Because once bull markets come around, there is a lot of noise, a lot of distractions, and a lot of shiny new objects.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, like Injective's history, or like the lifetime of Injective, obviously, like naturally speaking, like the majority of the time is in the bear market, where like everyone is just like heads down building. Everyone is making like long term investments on like infrastructure that can create like very much exponential impact. Kind of like working on stuff that might be like boring to the public, but we all know like the long term value of it. Resolving like tech debts, basically, quote unquote, in a sense. And I think that's honestly like the most exciting part as a team, to like build stuff that paves the way for like something that's going to be extremely impactful in the future. Almost like you're kind of building stuff that's going to undoubtedly go around and prove everyone is like, oh, like we had foresight, or we had belief, instead of like during the bull market, which is like everyone rushing to like kind of like adapt to different types of narratives, different types of consumer trends, etc. And then after a while you probably get like different types of affirmation on like, oh, like you guys do a great job and like build really quickly, but you don't necessarily get to enjoy like kind of like the gratification from like being like a great builder in a sense, or a great quote unquote like engineer, where you had foresight in terms of building something that people didn't anticipate. And I think that is honestly oftentimes the greatest joy.
Yeah, it's going one direction when everybody thinks you're crazy, and then after a while being proven correct with the design decisions that you make is very satisfying. Can you talk about the team today and like what you guys are excited about for, let's say, 2024 on the Injective roadmap?
Yeah, so I think a lot of them are about like kind of like divide and conquer in a sense of amongst our teams. Like one team focuses on like a lot of base layer stuff, focus on like building out like an infrastructure that can scale to like a massively growing ecosystem, building out like the best possible like developer tool set, building out different types of modules that can 10x enhance various use cases and various like consumer signs that we kind of noticed. And then on the other hand, it's about like eating our own dog food, innovating and building on different types of like application verticals, not only as a demonstration to other builders on the capabilities, or like, hey, like we've done like a 10% or 20% work. You can imagine like how big it's going to be when it taps into like maybe even just 80%. And building out different types of apps where it's like, yeah, like it's very hard to like be the first mover on this, but don't worry, we help you guys do the first mover part, and we ate the shit sometimes, made mistakes, and here's kind of like a product after like various iterations. And by kind of like interactively dividing your mind between like the application layer and also the base layer, you kind of are forced upon yourself to have the realizations like, oh, like different types of infrastructure or different types of base layer, you make some like very gracious or optimistic assumptions like, yeah, they can't be that dumb where like they don't want to work around that or like address the solution. And then you start to realize, you start to face reality, which is like, okay, this is actually a lot more important than we thought. There's no solution around it other than like addressing it from the base layer. So yeah, like that's been like consistently a theme. So we have a lot of output in terms of like application kind of like developments, etc. Different types of renovations or improvements on existing products. But more importantly, on the base layer, there's a lot of exponentially kind of like exponential impact via various chain upgrades, different types of like module upgrades, etc., and a lot of very very long term developments like parallelized kind of smart contract environments, or adding like a kind of like a roll up slash parallelize slash interoperability environments for all of those ecosystem environments. And it all boils down to kind of like synchronously like moving towards like a specific very palpable use case, and making long, short, medium term like investments into the roadmap.
And I think on that point, one of the things that has been difficult for various ecosystems, L1s or L2s, has been the community side, and getting that rabid community to live and die kind of by the sword. How has the community with Injective really rallied in like the last 6 months and come together? And what are maybe even some of the exciting applications that you've been seeing built on Injective that are either not built elsewhere or just built better in the Injective ecosystem?
Yeah, so I definitely stopped keeping track of like all the ecosystem development and all the dApps, etc. Definitely like all the information, all the stuff I can talk about is probably like a few months old, because Jesus Christ, there's just so many like every single day. So it's very tough to like remember them by name these days. But so I think like one of the interesting part is that we've certainly had like a massive surge in terms of like ecosystem projects and developer activities. I think like first half of or second half of last year, etc. And honestly, like most people think that like it's because of various tools, etc., or it's because of certain like a spark of event, but it's really like a long term like like a very very long like building and various upgrades and various improvements to lay down the foundation to enable like a some sort of like developer activity, and most importantly sustaining them and retaining them to be constantly iterating in like a reasonable pace. Because I think like one of the interesting part about like the Injective developer ecosystem we noticed throughout the years is that oftentimes like it will have like a pretty kind of like strong spikes in terms of like developer interest, user interest, etc. But oftentimes it doesn't spike exponentially like a lot of generalized environments such as Solana, etc. And that's mainly because it has like a certain application angle, it has like a certain like focus, and a lot of different stacks or different types of tools are kind of built with like a UX centric rather than like a like super like a developer or generalized type of opinion in mind. And this kind of allows for basically, like let's say like it could have gotten like 1,000 developers or projects to deploy, but instead we got like 200, 500, etc. But what's interesting, and we didn't notice like the upside of this until like very very recently or this time around, is that the retention of a lot of these projects are extremely sticky and much more sticky than like a lot of the spikes in other ecosystems that we noticed. And that's mainly because people manage to kind of see or leverage different types of native mechanisms, leveraging the Oracle module, leveraging the order book, leveraging, different types of derivative primitives, or different types of auto executing kind of like functionalities, to a point where they actually manage to like get a lot of different users, get a lot of different kind of like value props out there to different types of ecosystems, and really bring on users from like a kind of like non like self-referencing way, where it's like, oh, like, we built this tool and then so it's only Injective users. But it also allowed them, more importantly, to like interface with the greater ecosystems. Like, oh, like there's this app, that's meant for like Ethereum users. It just happened to be on the Injective chain. A lot of users might not even notice that they're interacting with a dApp on top of the Injective chain, and a lot of users get onboarded that way. And I think that's like truly what's really, really exciting and fascinating to me.
Yeah, being able to build that organic community takes time. And then once you kind of hit that Cambrian explosion, you're like, holy shit, there's actually a lot of stuff going on in the ecosystem, and it's really hard to follow. Personally, do you have any area of focus that you're excited about, whether that's within the DeFi ecosystem, crypto AI, DePIN, that you're just excited to see more innovation, more continued experimentation within the Injective ecosystem?
Yeah, so I think in terms of like building, like and one of the most interesting part is I certainly overestimated like or underestimated like the complexity going from like a very, very well spec like paper or different types of docs into like an actual like final product, etc. Because in terms of a lot of like ecosystem development, we're still like digging into like past like research posts from like a year-ish ago or 2 years ago on like how we envisioned, or like like the more advanced utilization, or different types of applications of Injective modules. And a lot of like the dApps on top of the Injective ecosystem are digging into it. So there's a bit of a like research, brainstorming, shooting shit backlog that like we're kind of like catching up to with all the developers in the ecosystem. So a lot of like very, very novel mechanisms, and a lot of like what's available already within the CeFi stack, like like general global margining, or portfolio margining, or different types of like open margining, in a sense where basically it becomes like a credit-based marketplace for borrowing and collateralization. Or a lot of my time is spent on figuring out different types of like institutional like permission products, and how it can be how do I call it, like retroactively and more importantly, like seamlessly integrate with the existing like dApps, and also liquidity, more importantly, and coming up with various mechanisms and various tools to be compliant with like a lot of different types of regulatory frameworks or compliance frameworks that set up by a lot of these like massive institutions, and still manage to like get the product out, get the kind of like a liquidity or issuer liquidity out, while making use of it, instead of like just having like a glorified on-chain minted token that's really just like a like a Web2 platform. And honestly, like a lot of my time is just spent on like also just like coming up with like different types of interoperability solutions, creating different types of very much hands-off, really steering into the fact that like Injective is this multi-chain like platform slash engine to like do a specific set of activities, or satisfy a specific set of needs. And really, once you finish the needs, you can like go back to your ecosystem. It's not like meant to be like a entrapment per se. And coming up with different types of interoperability solutions, like outpost contracts on Ethereum, et cetera, or coming up with like different types of VM layers to kind of exponentially grow the developer ecosystem, and more importantly, like creating kind of this facet for them to build different types of interoperability tools where, like in like a kind of like a ideal world, like users on Ethereum can access different types of tools, exchanges, DeFi apps on top of Injective, all through Ethereum without even having to realize or having to deal with any type of direct transactions on top of Injective.
I think some blockchain communities to either bootstrap the community side or the engineering side have kind of taken different approaches, some with varying results. We've seen Polygon announce some like large partnerships. I would say Solana and Ethereum more focus on like the grassroots, other larger protocols focusing on partnership announcements. How does Injective or the foundation really approach building both the institutional adoption side and kind of the crypto native side in terms of helping foster that community?
Yeah, so I think the foundation has really excelled at like engaging with like the institutions and working on bridging the gap for like the institutional like TradFi type of infrastructure, and how it can be incorporated within like the Injective more DeFi centric like infrastructure and primitives. And it's to a degree where like me at like Injective Labs are just a bunch of mechanics trying to come up with like different types of tools and solutions, or build the solutions to satisfy like the foundation's needs for that respect. And I think like generally like for different types of blockchains and for different types of ecosystems, there's really like a optimal playbook at different stage, different scale, different setup, and most importantly, different types, different amount of money that they have, and perhaps like Polygon's like approach is like a long term optimal approach down the road. But certainly the very very clear answer for Injective's ecosystems case is that this was never considered or even like fathomed, because the ecosystem doesn't have that much money. And I think like it's really about like coming up with the optimal solution over time, more likely than not via trial and error, to come up with a different approach in terms of growing the ecosystem on the general consumer like end user base, or via different types of rails, which most importantly at the end of the day is meant to expand the reach to the end users and end consumers.
Yeah, I don't know if there is a correct way to do it yet. I think the jury's still out whether partnerships or kind of focusing on grassroots community or some combination of both is the secret sauce, but it takes some time regardless. I think,
Yeah, it took Web2 like decades to come up with like a proper like a growth marketing playbook. We got
yeah,
time.
yeah, definitely. In terms of if you could like wave a magic wand from the engineering point of view, what was something you would love to see happen within the Injective community?
Yeah, I think that's going to require like a whole book for that. Um, I feel like like by creating like a native infrastructure, by creating like a kind of like a blockchain, practically speaking, like from scratch, we end up missing out and kind of like making it difficult for like various infrastructure that the Ethereum ecosystem or Ethereum kind of like EVM based environments kind of take for granted in a sense, such as like different types of like tracking solution, out of box integrations, different types of like infrastructure to allow for like archival data, archival index data, etc. And more importantly, it's just a sheer amount of like mindshare tools and different types of development activity around optimizing, around like integrating with a lot of different types of existing Web 2, Web 3 solutions that oftentimes like developers certainly care a lot about, but gets skipped over by end users. And from end user perspective, it probably only manifests as like, oh, like why is it so difficult to like get like a historical data, or like why is the like logs or like contract interaction so ugly, and all just like raw data. Like I want to see more like fancy like visualizations, etc. And I think like over time, like this is certainly like a hidden like like a challenge or difficulty that like oftentimes like other developers within the Cosmos ecosystem, or like other developers within various like kind of layer one blockchains or layer two solutions, anyone who's like working kind of like out of the box, like in like a non out of box approach, where like a lot of tools are just non-existent, and you have to build it yourself.
Yeah, Ethereum being the first, there was a lot of infrastructure around tooling, developer experience, ops that was starting to become very much more robust compared to these other ecosystems. And I think it just takes some time for that community to kind of gain steam and build some of those longer tools. But Ethereum is definitely ahead of the game there.
Yeah. And Ethereum has a lot less tech debt, that's for sure.
Perhaps more. I don't know. They do have a good amount of tech debt in my mind as well.
No, you guys are at a much higher starting point.
Yeah. Well, Eric, as we're kind of wrapping up, is there anything from like a engineering or kind of like final thoughts that you would want people to take away from the podcast as they watch this, listen to it, and want to learn either more about the Injective ecosystem, about foundations, about labs, and they saw this podcast and they're interested to dive deeper? What would be like the takeaway for you, and where would you point them to?
Yeah. So basically the starting point is injective.com. And that will basically be like kind of like this master directory for you to, find a lot of things that you're looking for, a lot of things that you need. I'm definitely the type to never read like a website or like look into it and just like go for like Google, whatever. And, interestingly for Injective's case, the website is actually very much up to date, and a lot of stuff that, like that's very, very difficult to locate through like Googling with like proper keywords. It actually, would have saved you a lot of time if you, just go through a website really quickly in the beginning. And then on the other hand, like for Injective Labs case, there's been a lot of work around like Helix, around Mito, around like various different types of like developer tools, etc. That would be kind of like a very, very great like first step example for you to check out, for you to get a sense of like what the Injective ecosystem is capable of, as like a bit of a reference implementation, etc. And above all else, like like a follow Injective on Twitter and or X these days. And like getting started to develop, especially if you know Rust, is easier than ever.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, maybe we'll end it there. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, Eric. Thanks for nerding out with me on the technical side, going deeper into what that enables on the product side. I think those two are extremely important. The trials and tribulations from launching in 2020 to going through the bear market to now today. I wish you and the Injective team all the success, and thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.